Good afternoon to you. 3:06 now. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up this half hour, well, at the bottom of the hour, Harmeet Dhillon will be with us, the legal expert, as CEO, founder of the Center for American Liberty. We'll talk to her about what's happening in Ohio and across the country, but in particular Ohio, where the legislature there just overrode the Republican governor's veto, and the legislature protecting children from mutilation and protecting women's sports. This is easy stuff. A Republican governor had to be dragged kicking and screaming into protecting kids. Harmeet will explain why. Barry Loudermilk, the congressman, is with us at 4 o'clock. He's been digging in on all of the January 6th information. He'll share the latest with you. And Charlie Spearing is here at 5 o'clock from Breitbart News, White House correspondent there. He's also the author of a new book on Kamala Harris. The title of that book, Amateur Hour. Excited to talk to Charlie. You can talk to us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. When last we met, we were discussing how the United States Senate was working up a package of horrendous so-called solutions for the border. These were not solutions. They were trying to, as I said yesterday, codify chaos. They were trying to make it so that illegal foreign nationals who were pouring into our country would be granted amnesty for doing that. They would give them a way to do that in record numbers, and they would only further open our border. So that's not a border fix. That's a way to change the goalposts so that foreign nationals can pour into our country on a more routine basis. It's like insane. It's totally insane. And the senators behind closed doors were debating this, and they really weren't even showing us the text of this bill. But luckily for us, some of the proposals from that package leaked. And to share them with you once again, let me make sure you understand what was in this bill. 5,000. They wanted to legally establish that we would have 5,000 illegal aliens enter the country per day as the new norm. Per day. Far outpacing anything Jay Johnson, as DHS Secretary under Barack Obama, ever considered to be a crisis. They expected there would be upwards of 1.8 million foreign nationals pouring across our border in that way every year under this new legislation. Why do we need it? Why do we already have laws telling people not to come in, and they're already outpacing these numbers. So 1.8 million a year was what the Senate was working on. That's insane. Do you know how many immigrants we allow into the country legally each year? You familiar with that number? It's 1 million. It's a simple number to remember. It has been historically, it's been about 1 million legal immigrants to the United States per year. The Senate was working on a bill as of yesterday to allow nearly 2 million illegal immigrants into the country each year. If you are an immigrant, a legal immigrant within the sound of my voice, does that make sense to you? You're the dummy who did it the right way. You should have just poured across the border. It would be a lot easier. They could the bill would have provided amnesty to a documented dreamer class, taking care of 250,000 people whose parents replaced American workers under the deeply flawed H-1B guest worker program. How about that? They would keep mass parole programs in place, provide illegal immigrants enter through American airports and not at the border. It would give quicker work permits to illegal aliens likely committing asylum fraud by ending the 180-day wait period. Expand the already vast network of free benefits like legal services for illegal aliens, adding to the services Americans are going to have to fund by their tax money for hundreds of billions of dollars a year. And then to funnel billions more dollars to the corrupt NGOs that profit off of the border crisis. So you tell me what part of that would actually secure our border. The answer is not a single detail. Not a single detail. So we've had a couple conversations on this. Yesterday, we had Senator Eric Schmidt from Missouri come on, and he gave me some hope, and he said, look, this thing is dying, and it will die. If it gets out of the Senate, it will die in the House. He said with some certainty yesterday, and that buoyed me a little bit. Like, okay, finally, somebody's standing up for us here, at least in the face of this chaos. You saw Senator Ted Cruz step up to a microphone yesterday, big press briefing, and he said a bunch of obvious things, including this.
The Biden border crisis is an absolute humanitarian disaster, and Democrats don't care. Last year, 853 migrants died crossing illegally into this country. Alejandro Mayorkas didn't even know how many had died because he didn't care.
Yeah, they don't care, he said. And then he went to the bill itself, and he described it as, let's see, a kamikaze plane in a boxed canyon with no exit.
Because if they cared, they would stop it. If you cared about the children being raped at the border, you would say no more. When Joe Biden came in, we had the lowest rate of illegal immigration in 45 years. He inherited success, and he deliberately broke it. Democrats want these open borders. And this bill, this mysterious bill, that is buried down in the basement of Chuck Schumer's office. All of you have a living as reporters. Ask yourself, why have you not read the text of the bill? There's a reason.
Because they have no interest.
As bad as we think the bill is, I promise you it's worse. The people pushing this deal know if the American people knew what was in it, they would be against it. This supplemental bill is a kamikaze plane in a box canyon with no exit, headed for a train wreck.
Oh, yeah, that too. Yeah. So that was Ted Cruz yesterday. Here's the good news as of this morning. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell told Republican senators in a private meeting that time and the political will to pass a bipartisan immigration and border security compromise are quickly running out and may have already run out. This is Punch Bowl News reporting this morning. It's a Capitol Hill rag. And they say it's over. In fact, they say that's because former President Donald Trump wants to run his 2024 campaign focusing on immigration. Get ready for this. There's a developing talking point. It's already catching hot fire today on the left. And here's how the story goes. The story goes this way. Trump is now obviously going to be the nominee. McConnell is bowing to that pressure, realizing that the people want, whether McConnell wants him or not. McConnell doesn't want him. McConnell hates Trump, but he's like, okay, look, I'm a political realist. I see what's happening. Trump's becoming the nominee. Trump is against this package, so Trump brings to bear pressure on McConnell and the Senate, and they say, okay, we have to back out of this. We can't do this. So they're stepping away from it now. So that in some sense, that's good news. Here's where the left is dementing the whole entire conversation. The argument today is that Trump stopped this horrific bill, what you and I realize is a horrific bill. The reason he stopped the bill is because he doesn't want border security yet. That he wants the immigration crisis to continue until he's president. This is the argument. And they're making it with a straight face. They're making it with a straight face today. So all of a sudden, what you're seeing happen in unison today, I'm telling you, turn on any one of these networks. They're all doing it together. For 3 years, they denied that there was any crisis on the border. They went with the White House line. This is a challenge. This is a challenge. Kamala Harris is addressing root causes. Oh, those racist Republicans. What are they against? Bunch of bigots. There's desperate people coming across our border. It's not a crisis. Now, today, he'll turn 180 degrees. It's a crisis. We have a crisis on our southern border. And do you know why we have that crisis? Because Donald Trump wants it to continue because he sees it as a political advantage for the crisis to continue. This is what they're saying today. And I know it's the dumbest possible thing. So Biden doesn't own the crisis. But now when they admit it's a crisis, it's Trump's fault, and he's not even president of the United States. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Here's an example of this. CNN's Manu Raju had captured some remarks today from Senator Mitt Romney, and then over on CNN they're doing this thing too. They're insisting it's Trump's fault. This is all Trump's fault.
Yeah, do you think this is what he wants? The issue, Donald Trump. This is why he's doing this.
I think the border is a very important issue for Donald Trump, and the fact that he would communicate to Republican senators and Congresspeople that he doesn't want us to solve the border problem because he wants to blame Biden for it.
He never said those words. I guarantee you, as I sit here today, he never said anything that approximates that. I don't want you to solve this. I want you to save it for me. I'd rather people suffer until I'm president of the United States again. This is the fakest of fake news stories of the entire week. I won't say all year because, we get them every week. We get a different one. whether it involves the Border Patrol, Donald Trump, Trump supporters, January 6th, the weather, COVID. It's different every week. But right now, this week, this is the front runner for the single dumbest invented fake story of the week. And there's Mitt Romney, who at one time somehow was the Republican nominee for president. You know, the guy who invented Obamacare. Republicans ran him against Obama. It's like so crazy. It's so crazy. So here's Romney. He's saying Trump just wants this to be a political issue all the way through the year, and that's why we're not going to solve the border crisis, even though the bill did nothing of the sort.
To Republican senators and Congress people that he doesn't want us to solve the border problem because he wants to blame Biden for it is really appalling.
It's a lie.
But the reality is
that
we have a crisis at the border. The American people are suffering as a result of what's happening at the border. And someone running for president ought to try and get the problem solved, as opposed to saying, "Hey, save that problem."
Somebody
Don't
running
solve
for
it.
president.
What
about the president of the United States? Why is a Republican senator, Mitt Romney, not even sparing a syllable for the guy who's currently in the Oval Office, who's currently destroying the border, who's currently using your tax money to do it? Look, I realize in Mitt Romney's world, he is so absurdly rich that he can live away from all of these problems. He can fly off to one of his many palaces. He can disappear to whatever little walled-off garden he's got in his corner of the world, free of all of this, probably taking advantage of illegal labor in order to make his life better. But the rest of us have to live with the consequences of this. And so Romney's attacking Trump because he doesn't like him? How emotionally incontinent is this guy? And he's doing it on CNN. And Monteraju tosses him a softball. He's like, hey, you think Trump is doing this for political gain? And Romney's like, yep, clicking it out of the park. Yep, he's doing it for political gain. He's doing this. He's just going to hurt the country for his own benefit. These people are sick. Here's more from Manu. Like right out of that segment, he goes back and they start yammering on in the studio about, man, I can't believe Trump's doing this.
But that is the cold, hard reality on Capitol Hill. Getting any deal through on an issue as complex as immigration would be complicated to begin with. And then when you have the party's likely standard bearer coming out and saying, don't cut a deal done on immigration, that will convince many Republicans.
He's not saying that. He's not saying anything like that. He's saying don't grant amnesty and make it so that more foreign nationals can pour across our border. That's a simple ask. How hard is this?
To listen to their standard bearer and say that it is not time to cut a deal. Let's wait on this issue. And then all the major issues that go along with it. Funding for Ukraine, funding for Israel.
You know, we had somebody say yesterday, and one of our guests, I think, raised this. I want to give proper credit, but I don't know who said it. Somebody said on our air yesterday that one of the other pieces of this. Now, you and I have not seen the text of this bill, but we do have the outlines as they've been leaked by the Republicans who think it's horrific. They're sharing it. And one of the things to look out for is they want to change the law in such a way as to hamstring Trump from getting this under control. That's one of the points of this legislation, is to make it harder for Trump to get the whole thing, the whole entire mess under control. It was Eric Schmidt who said that? Okay, Missouri Senator Eric Schmidt did say that to us yesterday. So yet another reason that this thing should be, and luckily for us, is DOA at this moment. McConnell telling everybody about it, probably begrudgingly. Yeah, we're pulling it. You know, Trump's the nominee, he says. But it's a blame game over on CNN. They can't blame Biden, who destroyed the border. They're blaming Trump, who's not president.
Funding for Taiwan. All we're supposed to tie together in this massive package, including this new border that they hope to get out of the Senate as soon as this week, and then try to get it over to the House, where the politics are even more complicated over there, given the Republican-led House and the alliance of the GOP leaders there with Trump, all spells potential doom for this almost must-pass package, potentially punting this into the next year as Republicans and Democrats, John, try to figure out what's next.
So that's the talking point today. I just want you to know about it because you're going to detect it everywhere now. You're going to see it all over the place. And it's just a reminder also, like, this is the way Democrat talking points go. Like somebody over at the White House or in the Biden orbit, they cook this stuff. They're like, how about this? How about we blame Trump for the border crisis? We'll even call it a crisis now, but it's Trump's fault. What do you think? Oh, yeah. How do we do that? Well, we say that, we tried to fix the border, but Trump stopped us. What? Is anybody hearing themselves? If you have a lick of journalistic integrity, you don't buy into this crap. But that's not what we just heard. Yeah, so a horrific amnesty package is being debated in the United States Senate. Some Republicans successfully worked to defeat it. Apparently, Donald Trump has made some phone calls. He wants to see it defeated because he doesn't want to see America's illegal immigration invasion crisis get any worse. And now Trump's being blamed for the state of our border. You see how this works? That Punch Bowl story that I was quoting from, the one that talked about how McConnell had to begrudgingly tell the caucus, well, Trump's against us, so I guess we're not doing it. Well, they say in their copy, quote, these inter-Republican clashes once again laid bare how the GOP prefers to use the border crisis as a political talking point instead of solving the underlying problem. What a bunch of scam artists. That is pornographic, what I just read. They are performing intimate acts on Democrats. That it is disgusting, candidly. In fact, I probably should have given you some sort of parental guidance warning before I read it. But to come out and say that, so Republicans are fighting, so that demonstrates that the Republicans love the border crisis? How stupid can you get? But yeah, there it is. Let's see here. Let's bring in Dave from Silver Spring, line 2. Dave, you're on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hello, sir. Dave. All right, let's see. Mark in Woodbridge, line 3. Mark, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hi, Vince. How's your day going?
All right, Mark.
Look, I always ask questions. The federal government shutdown that they're always talking about, what percentage actually shuts down when you have a federal shutdown? Who doesn't get reimbursed? Who doesn't get refunded? Mm-hmm. It doesn't really shut down because you got essential, right, non-essentials. Do you think anybody in the swamp loses their paycheck? Absolutely not.
No. I mean, and that's a piece of leverage we have on the table to actually get something done. If they're that panicked about it, then maybe they could take care of us. Oh, no, the government's in crisis. Yeah, I got news for you. America's in crisis. We could use the help. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate the call. Coming up, we're going to talk to Harmeet Dhillon about all of this, and in particular about what's going on in the state of Ohio. That one matters. A Republican governor there was okay with child mutilation. The state legislature just overrode his veto. Good afternoon to you. 3:36 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, Congressman Barry Loudermilk is here at 4 o'clock. He's been digging in to January 6th, the events, and he's getting a lot of new answers. He'll share some with us today. Also, we have the breaking news that yet another Trump official has been imprisoned by the Biden administration. Real jail time for not playing along with a fake committee. And then Charlie Spearing is here from Breitbart at 5 o'clock. He's got a brand new book on Kamala Harris. It's called Amateur Hour. We'll discuss. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. A big week for protecting children in the United States. The Ohio Senate voted yesterday, Wednesday, to override Republican, yes, I said Republican Governor Mike DeWine's veto of a bill that would prohibit doctors from performing sex change medical procedures on minors. That's the Daily Caller reporting. Let me put it differently. To protect kids from mutilation, Ohio has overridden their Republican governor's veto. For more on this, I want to bring in the woman that we've been talking to on this subject. It's Harmeet Dhillon. She's the CEO and the founder of the Center for American Liberty, and she joins us now. Harmeet, great to talk to you today.
Yes, thanks for having me today, Vince.
Well, this does seem like a huge victory for the children of Ohio.
Absolutely, and not just for the children of Ohio. This override of the veto sends a very strong message to Republicans and Democrats nationally how important this issue is, and I think it's going to be a factor in the coming election in all kinds of races up and down the ballot, legislators, governors, members of Congress, and even in the presidential campaign.
The law bars doctors from performing so-called transgender surgeries or prescribing cross-sex hormones and puberty blockers to children, to minors. And the vote was overwhelming, 28-4 in the Senate. Very, very little disagreement here on what is quite obviously a common sense thing.
Absolutely. And the SAFE Act actually combines two policies, the one that you mentioned, but also importantly, it protects equal athletic opportunity for Ohio's female athletes by prohibiting males from competing on women's teams. And that mirrors 22 states on gender-affirming care bans for children. 23 states have laws protecting women's sports. So this is a popular issue nationally. But setting aside the politics, it's insane to me that we've come to this stage in the country where a significant part of the population thinks it's okay for doctors to do this quack surgery on children and permanently mutilate them. But even before that, peddling the lie that these hormones that are pushed on children by the pharma industry and unscrupulous doctors, that their effects are reversible. Their effects are not reversible. And the children who have taken these drugs and then changed their mind, which is increasingly shown to be most of those children,
yes,
are suffering permanent harm with skin problems, bone brittleness, infertility, and unknown consequences. So, we have laws in this country to protect children from child labor,
yes,
very important, to protect them from sex trafficking and exploitation, to even protect them from tattoos that they'd like to get and from driving and drinking. Yet we allow children whose minds aren't even fully formed until their 20s to mutilate themselves with adults preying on them.
Well,
so I'm so proud of Ohio and our client, Chloe Cole at the Center for American Liberty,
yes,
who testified on this issue and led the effort to get this shut down.
She's a total star and a hero for breaking free of all of the madness in order to help others. It's just such a blessing to the rest of us. So you mentioned these puberty blockers. I didn't know. I think it was Matt Walsh's documentary is where I realized this. What is a woman? But one of the drugs they use as a puberty blocker is called Lupron. Apparently, it's also used to chemically castrate sex offenders. It's the same exact drug.
Oh yes, and it's got applications, legitimate applications for people with prostate cancer, and problems like that. Used on children this way, it started out for sure as an off-label use of this drug, and that's another issue. I mean, someone needs to hold the pharma industry accountable. And what a lot of people don't know, they think, oh, this is about children's rights and about human rights. Literally, there was an explosion in the emphasis on this kind of treatment and surgery during COVID. Now, anybody here who had some elective back problem or issue like that, they wanted to get taken care of by surgery during COVID, suddenly the emergency rooms were shut down to them. But walk into a pop psychologist's office and claim that you want to change your gender, and boom, suddenly that was approved as life-affirming and necessary surgery. So these types of surgeries and medical treatments actually were a financial cash cow and kept some of these medical institutions alive during a difficult time in our country.
So let's
how cynical.
Sorry. Finish your thought. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. I was going to say how cynical for doctors, so-called doctors and medical professionals, to prey on unsuspecting children and lie to them about the long-term impact and consequences of this life-changing decision.
Yeah, big time. So back to the politics of it. You've got, Mike DeWine, the Ohio governor. He vetoed this in the first place, which is insane to me. But he's not the first Republican governor to do something like this. What are the pressures that these Republican governors are responding to when they don't side with children and families? What is that about? Did Mike DeWine perform transgender surgeries in his past or something? What's the deal here?
So I'm scratching my head on this, and to be very, transparent, I can only assume there's some financial motivation on the part of medical donors or pharma industry to Republicans. I mean, the pharma industry and doctors' lobbies tend to support Republicans because Republicans reflexively avoid, tort liability and protect people. They think they're doing a good thing, but let's face it, out of, hundreds of thousands of doctors in the country, there are a few who might deserve to get their licenses suspended or taken away. And I would include doctors who literally go on TikTok and prey on girls who are expressing confusion about their gender. During COVID, they would slide into their direct messages and tell them that they could get their breasts removed at particular clinics. This is totally unethical and outrageous. And what we have found at the Center for American Liberty and at my law firm in representing multiple young women who were mutilated by unscrupulous doctors is that they had what we call in the medical profession comorbidities. They had undiagnosed psychiatric issues. Some of them have had sexual assault and sexual abuse in their childhood and in their background. Some of them are on the autism spectrum. This is quite common in this case. And yet doctors skipped over getting to the root of why these girls wanted to become boys and simply rubber stamped it. And so they did not treat their underlying conditions, which remained untreated. Many of these kids who take these drastic actions go on to commit suicide. And then the medical industry said, well, they committed suicide because they were unhappy with their gender.
Right.
No, maybe they committed suicide because you messed up their life for good. That's what we see from many of the influencers who talk about these issues. They feel some days they feel worthless. They feel their life is over. Nobody will ever look at them again like a normal human being. This is a tragedy, and it's absolutely barbaric what is happening in America.
My sense is that some doctors must feel like they're being threatened into silence on this issue, that their professional relationships and colleagues in their industry has decided that mutilating children is just a normal thing. It's a matter of course. In fact, that's the treatment. And doctors are, I think, worried that they would be considered kooks if they speak out and say, hey, wait a second, this is a problem.
Well, peer pressure is definitely a huge tool, and we see it in corporate America. We see it in professions. I certainly see it in the law profession. But let me tell you, I think the silent majority of doctors, including pediatricians, think this is crazy. Most doctors did not go into medicine to make a bunch of money. They went in to help people. Money is incidental. And, you know, I see a growing number of pediatricians and doctors. And by the way, this whole thing is creating a backlash against transgender treatment and surgery, elective surgery, even for adults, because you know, people are being peddled the lie that you can, quote unquote, gender is a social construct and you can change your gender. You cannot change your sex. It is impossible. All you can do is potentially live like the other gender, but I think, you know, even that is generally not very successful. And to what end? Around the world, countries that started doing this surgery on minors and even adults earlier than California and other states and the United States did have stopped doing it because it doesn't work. Not for ideological reasons. It doesn't solve the problem of gender dysphoria. And most kids who have this problem grow out of it by the time they become adults. But what doctors are doing is making sure they are never happy with their bodies by doing this to them as children.
Right. And there's, you know, even the big medical organizations, the American Medical Association and the American Academy of Pediatrics, they're going along with the witch doctor science here. They're the modern day lobotomies, the chopping up of these children. They're all on board, and they act as if it's normal in their industry.
This is all forms of Marxism, DEI, you name it, different labels for it. But the idea that we can destroy the fundamental human units, family relationships, the very biology of people is Marxist. It's destructive, and people need to stop being cowards and nodding their heads or clapping when people are doing this in their peer groups, in their PTA, in their soccer mom groups. It is not funny. It is not cool. It is child abuse. Let us call it what it is. It is child abuse to do this.
It's godless, and it indulges this idea that a child can be born in the wrong body. I mean, what a poisonous thought to put in a child's head, and yet adults are doing that. If I can, on one other issue, Harmeet Dhillon, because I know you know so much about the political world. I also want to ask you just if you have a general thought about the state of this 2024 primary right now. You know, Trump just had another big week in New Hampshire. There's some debate. Apparently, the RNC is contemplating naming him the, quote, presumptive nominee, essentially establishing that, yeah, he's going to win this thing. What do you make of it all?
Well, look, here's my view on this. So first of all, it's no secret I represent President Trump as a lawyer. My law firm is the main campaign counsel, and my name is on that brief at the United States Supreme Court regarding the Colorado election qualification. So, you know, I support that. And unfortunately, someone leaked this resolution, which is still under discussion at the RNC, but I'm co-sponsoring it. And here's my reasoning. I think, you know, 3 weeks ago, there are multiple people in the race, legitimate candidates seeking Republican votes in the primary. That's no longer the case today. What we saw in New Hampshire was, unfortunately, Nikki Haley, a governor who I once admired for her work as a governor, basically lying to people, saying that she came in second, but she came in second with a large percentage of Democrat and declined to state or independent voters. And sorry, this is Republican primary land. What we're talking about right now in the phase of the election is what's the choice, the standard bearer for Republicans. And I think it's game over when legitimate candidates seeking Republican votes, like Vivek Ramaswamy, like Ron DeSantis, like other people who I thank them for their service, they're leaders and they have futures. I just think it's over now. I do not see a pathway forward for Nikki Haley or anybody else to become the nominee with Republican votes. And so that's really, as an RNC official, I think it's over. And, you know, this is a symbolic move at the RNC. Of course, states will still continue to have their primaries. And because some of these folks dropped out very recently, their names are still on the ballot. So here in California, you know, we're going to have several people on the ballot. I encourage people to turn out and vote for President Trump. He's my choice. My family is voting that way in our primary. And let's focus on defeating the toxic, poisonous left that is destroying the American family, the American economy, the American border, the very concept of biology. This is a stand and fight moment in America, and we need to get our energy behind our nominee right now. So we can focus on the general election.
And I do have one more question for you on Nikki Haley. It seems to me that she is being used as a vehicle for election meddling by virtue of what you just said, which is the Democrat voters are using her as a way to cause more chaos on the right. But also she's backed by a huge Democrat donor by the name of Reid Hoffman, who's simultaneously been funding lawsuits against Donald Trump with the express purpose of trying to destroy his political future. I don't know how a Republican candidate could stomach that kind of support.
I mean, I'm baffled by this. I invited Nikki Haley to come speak at my county central committee many years ago. I was proud. She's popular. You know, I'm proud of her as a fellow Indian American for attaining the position of governor. But to see her pander that she's somehow the victim of discrimination. I mean, I grew up in North Carolina at the same time she grew up in South Carolina. Come on. You know, you became the governor. So the race card, the Reid Hoffman, the other Democrat donors, and the active pandering to get people to change their registration or just show up on election day and you know, vote with the Republican side when they're never going to vote for the Republican in the general election. That is so cynical and so twisted and weird. So I'm very disappointed in Nikki Haley. I hope she, you know, smells the coffee and figures out that if she wants a future in Republican politics, she needs to end this now and not just be a spoiler and a weirdo and really cheering for, you know, something to happen to Donald Trump. That's really the only pathway forward for her.
Okay, a final one
God
for
forbid.
you. A final one for you. The Wall Street Journal suggested this week that should Trump be convicted, that Nikki Haley may be laying in wait and the perfect person to become the nominee. Does that make sense to you at all?
I mean, I'm to speak in social media parlance, LOL. No way. And I do not know what will happen at that point. We have of course a convention coming up, and we will be debating some issues pretty fiercely. But Nikki Haley becoming the nominee if Donald Trump gets convicted in one of these wrongful prosecutions, his popularity has only gone up. I mean, Democrats effectively cemented him as the nominee by wrongful prosecutions. And if he gets wrongfully convicted, I think there's going to be a huge sympathy vote coming over from Democrats legitimately wanting to vote for him and people who are, you know, uncertain right now, but nobody wants to see this country become a shady banana republic like much of the rest of the world. So I really think that's crazy. I'm not voting for her.
Harmeet Dhillon, I love talking to you. You're always such a great guest. You always say exactly what's on your mind, and I really appreciate that. I know the audience does too. Thank you so much for joining us today. Yeah, the showdown between the federal government and the state of Texas is heating up. You now have Democrats in Congress who are calling for Joe Biden to federalize Texas's National Guard, to seize their troops, and to open our border. It's all coming to a head. We'll have the details coming up in the next hour. Also, Congressman Barry Loudermilk is just minutes away with some updates on January 6, 2021, the latest of what we're learning and why we have so many questions about the behavior of our federal government.